The skin collector. In the misty streets of Blackwood City, where fog clung to cobblestones like a desperate memory, the first body appeared. Detective Marcus Kane stood motionless, his weathered hands tucked into the pockets of a worn leather jacket, eyes fixed on the horrific tableau before him. The victim, a man in his mid-40s, lay spread-eagled in a narrow alleyway, his entire skin removed with such surgical precision that it seemed more like an art form than a murder. Forensic analyst Elena Rodriguez crouched nearby, her dark eyes scanning the corpse with a mixture of professional detachment and growing unease. "The cuts," she muttered, tracing an invisible line along the exposed musculature. "They're too perfect, too intentional." Kane knew something was different about this crime. This wasn't a random act of violence, but a calculated ritual that spoke of something far more sinister lurking beneath the city's mundane surface. Abraham Weiss worked in silence, surrounded by the ghosts of his ancestors. The workshop, passed down through generations, was more than a simple tailoring space. It was a sanctuary of dark craft. Mannequins stood like pale sentinels, draped in skins that seemed to whisper forgotten stories. The curse had chosen his family centuries ago, a terrible inheritance that demanded blood and flesh as its primary currency. Each skin was more than a mere covering. It was a gateway, a potential vessel for transformation that required precise skill and an understanding of human essence that went beyond mortal comprehension. Abraham's hands, scarred and trembling, moved with the precision of a master craftsman, selecting threads that were not made of cotton or silk, but of human memory and pain. The second body appeared a week later, discovered in an abandoned warehouse near the industrial district. Like the first, it had been meticulously skinned, the removal so clean that it seemed almost surgical. Detective Kane noticed a pattern emerging. Each victim carefully selected, their skin preserved with a reverence that suggested something beyond mere murder. Elena's forensic reports revealed microscopic details that defied conventional understanding. Trace amounts of an unknown preservative, threads of rare textile fibers not manufactured in any known factory, and strange ritualistic markings that seemed to hint at a deeper, more arcane purpose. The victims appeared random: a lawyer, a construction worker, a retired teacher. But Kane understood that in this killer's world, nothing was truly coincidental. Dr. Margaret Harrison, a historian specializing in urban legends and supernatural folklore, became an unexpected ally in Kane's investigation. Her office at Blackwood University was a labyrinth of ancient texts, yellowed manuscripts, and bizarre artifacts. "The concept of skinwalkers is older than most civilizations," she explained, spreading out a collection of medieval woodcuts depicting grotesque transformations. "In some traditions, wearing the skin of another allows one to inhabit their memories, their very essence." Her research uncovered references to a family of tailors, always named Weiss, who were rumored to possess a dark supernatural craft that went beyond simple murder. Each generation would create garments that could transform the wearer, allowing them to experience the complete life of the victim whose skin formed the fabric. Maria Gonzalez was the first survivor, a young nurse who had narrowly escaped an attack that left her psychologically shattered. Her testimony became a crucial piece of the puzzle. "He wasn't human," she whispered during her interview with Kane, her hands trembling. "When he approached me, it was like watching someone wear a suit that didn't quite fit right. His movements were off, like he was learning how to be the person whose skin he wore." Psychological evaluations suggested trauma-induced hallucinations, but Kane knew better. The description matched the strange forensic evidence, a killer who didn't just take skins, but somehow became the victims themselves. The discovery of Abraham Weiss's workshop was both a breakthrough and a nightmare. Hidden beneath an ordinary tailor's storefront, the space was a museum of human transformation. Dozens of perfectly preserved skins hung like sacred vestments, each meticulously labeled with dates, names, and what seemed to be ritualistic coordinates. Kane realized this was more than a series of murders. This was a systematic collection, a dark archive of human experiences captured in the most intimate way possible. Photographs of generations of Weiss family members adorned the walls, each portrait showing a subtle, unsettling similarity. Eyes that seemed to shift, faces that looked slightly borrowed. Elena's genetic analysis revealed something extraordinary. The Weiss family line carried a unique genetic mutation, a rare chromosomal variation that suggested an evolutionary adaptation beyond normal human capabilities. It wasn't just a skill or a curse, it was a biological imperative. The ability to preserve and transfer human essence through skin was encoded in their very DNA, a horrifying example of genetic memory that defied scientific understanding. Blood samples from Abraham showed cellular structures that could temporarily mimic the genetic makeup of other individuals, a capability that went far beyond any known medical phenomenon. As more bodies appeared, a pattern emerged that went beyond simple murder. Each victim was chosen with extraordinary care. Their professions, physical characteristics, and personal histories seemed to follow a complex selection process. A retired judge, a young artist, a veteran police officer, each skin added to Weiss's collection represented a specific archetype, a unique human experience carefully curated like rare specimens in a macabre museum. Kane began to understand that this was more than a killing spree. This was preservation. This was documentation of human existence in its most raw and vulnerable form. The scientific community would never understand the true nature of the Weiss family's ability. What appeared to be mere skin was actually a complex biological network of memory-encoded cells capable of transmitting not just physical characteristics, but entire lived experiences. When a skin suit was worn, the wearer didn't just impersonate the victim. They became a living, breathing repository of that individual's memories, traumas, and deepest secrets. Abraham's research journals, discovered hidden in a false-bottomed drawer, revealed decades of meticulous documentation. Each transformation was a delicate process, requiring precise environmental conditions, specific ritualistic preparations, and a genetic compatibility that went beyond simple DNA matching. Margaret Harrison's deeper research uncovered the origins of the Weiss curse. During the late 17th century, the family's ancestors were textile workers in a small European village, persecuted for perceived witchcraft. A vengeful witch's curse bound their bloodline to a supernatural craft that would force them to preserve human experiences through the most intimate method possible, wearing their very skin. Each generation was compelled to continue the work, collecting and preserving human stories through this macabre method. The curse ensured that if they refused, they would experience unimaginable physical deterioration, their own skin literally peeling away in punishment. As the investigation progressed, Kane began to experience strange psychological symptoms. Nightmares featuring fragmented memories that weren't his own plagued his sleep. Flashes of unfamiliar lives, a childhood memory of a fishing trip, the emotional pain of a lost love, the professional triumph of a successful court case began to bleed into his consciousness. Elena noticed the changes first. His mannerisms would occasionally shift, becoming momentarily indistinguishable from the victims they were investigating. Something about their proximity to Weiss's workshop was creating a sympathetic resonance, a supernatural contamination that threatened to unravel Kane's very sense of self. During a rare moment of candid conversation captured in his interrogation notes, Abraham Weiss explained his true motivation. "People live and die, and their stories are lost," he said, his eyes holding a terrifying intensity. "I am a collector of human experience. Each skin is a library, each transformation a way of ensuring that no human story is ever truly forgotten. We are not murderers. We are archivists of the human condition." His perspective was neither purely evil nor entirely sympathetic, but a complex philosophical approach to preserving human identity that existed beyond conventional moral boundaries. Elena's breakthrough came through a complex genetic analysis that revealed the true extent of the Weiss family's mutation. The ability to transfer and preserve human experiences was not just a supernatural skill, but a form of evolutionary adaptation. Their DNA contained complex protein structures that could temporarily rewrite cellular memory, allowing for near-perfect biological mimicry. This wasn't magic. It was a form of biological technology so advanced that it appeared supernatural to current scientific understanding. The ritualistic process of creating a skin suit was far more complex than simple skinning. Abraham required specific conditions: moonlight during the winter solstice, precise body temperature at the moment of death, and a series of alchemical preparations that dated back to pre-industrial mystical practices. Each skin was treated with rare oils, blessed with ancestral incantations, and carefully preserved to maintain the integrity of the stored memories. The workshop was less a place of murder and more a sacred space of transformation, a living archive of human experience. Not all who encountered the skin collector died. Some survived, fundamentally changed. Maria Gonzalez, the nurse who initially survived, began to exhibit extraordinary abilities. She could sometimes access memories that weren't her own, experiencing fragments of lives she had never lived. Psychological evaluations suggested a form of trauma-induced dissociative identity disorder, but Kane recognized something more profound: a partial transformation that had fundamentally altered her neurological makeup. As the investigation deepened, Kane realized this was beyond standard legal boundaries. How does one prosecute a supernatural entity that views murder as a form of preservation? The traditional justice system had no framework for understanding the Weiss family's actions. Their work existed in a liminal space between crime and anthropological research, between murder and historical documentation. Abraham's lineage stretched back centuries, each generation bearing the curse with a mixture of horror and reverence. Family albums revealed generations of Weiss tailors, their portraits showing subtle shifts in appearance, eyes that didn't quite match their faces, expressions that seemed borrowed from someone else. Historical records suggested they had been active during some of humanity's most tumultuous periods, collecting and preserving stories from wars, plagues, social upheavals. They were not just killers, but archivists of human suffering and triumph. Modern forensic technology began to reveal the impossible. Digital reconstructions of the skin suits showed complex neural network patterns embedded within the cellular structure. It was as if each skin contained a biological hard drive of human experience, capable of storing and transferring memories with a precision that defied current scientific understanding. Elena's research suggested that the Weiss family had inadvertently discovered a form of biological data storage millennia before digital technology existed. Kane's psychological evaluations revealed alarming changes. He could now recall memories that weren't his own, vivid experiences of people he had never met. A construction worker's pride in completing a skyscraper. A teacher's moment of inspiring a struggling student. A lawyer's triumph in a landmark case. These weren't just random memories, but fully formed experiences that threatened to fragment his own sense of self. The proximity to Weiss's work was creating a sympathetic resonance that blurred the lines between individual identities. On the winter solstice, Kane and Elena witnessed the full transformation ritual. Abraham Weiss stood in a carefully prepared chamber, surrounded by preserved skins that seemed to breathe with an unnatural life. The process was both horrifying and mesmerizing. A skin suit would literally merge with the wearer's body, rewriting cellular memory, transferring entire lifetimes of experience in moments. It was less a murder and more a form of extreme biological archiving, a preservation of human experience that went beyond death. Margaret Harrison's research uncovered the true cost of the Weiss family's curse. Each generation paid a terrible price. Those who refused to continue the collection would experience progressive cellular decay, their own skin literally peeling away, memories fragmenting until they became nothing more than living husks. The curse demanded continuation, a dark biological imperative that gave them no choice but to collect and preserve. It became clear that the Weiss family was part of a larger, hidden network. Encoded messages in ancient texts, subtle references in folklore from around the world, suggested similar practitioners existed in various cultures. They were not alone. They were part of an underground movement of supernatural archivists who believed in preserving human experience through the most intimate method possible. Kane's investigation transformed from a hunt to a complex philosophical inquiry. Were these killings murders or a form of extreme anthropological preservation? Abraham Weiss was not a traditional serial killer, but a curator of human experience. Each skin suit represented a complete life story, preserved with a reverence that went beyond simple violence. The moral lines became increasingly blurred. Genetic testing revealed the extraordinary nature of the Weiss family's mutation. Their DNA contained unique protein structures that allowed for near-perfect biological mimicry. They could temporarily rewrite cellular memory, transfer entire life experiences, and exist between identities with a fluidity that defied human understanding. They were evolution's unexpected children, a biological technology so advanced it appeared supernatural. Maria Gonzalez was not alone. Other survivors began to emerge, people who had been partially transformed, carrying fragments of memories that weren't their own. They formed a hidden support group, struggling to understand their new reality. Some viewed their condition as a curse, others as an extraordinary gift. They were living proof of the Weiss family's supernatural capabilities. Each location where a skin was collected was carefully chosen. Specific geographical coordinates, aligned with ancient ley lines and areas of historical significance, played a crucial role in the preservation process. The murders were not random, but meticulously planned, each location adding a layer of supernatural significance to the collection. Modern technology began to intersect with the Weiss family's ancient craft. Digital memory preservation, genetic archiving, and neurological mapping all seemed to be catching up to what the family had been doing for centuries. Abraham's work was increasingly seen not as a horrific crime, but as a primitive form of biological data preservation. Psychological researchers became fascinated by the Weiss family's ability to transfer memories. The implications for understanding human consciousness were staggering. How much of our identity is truly our own? How easily can personal experiences be transferred, shared, or even stolen? The skin collector's work raised profound philosophical questions about the nature of self. The final piece of the puzzle emerged from Margaret Harrison's most obscure research. The curse originated during the Black Death, when a group of mystics sought to preserve human experiences during a time of unprecedented human suffering. The Weiss family was chosen as the vessel, bound by a complex supernatural contract to continue the collection through generations. The final confrontation between Kane and Abraham Weiss was not a typical detective story climax. It was a philosophical debate about the nature of human experience, memory, and preservation. Weiss presented his entire collection as a testament to human resilience, a museum of lived experiences that would otherwise be lost to time. As the investigation reached its apex, Kane discovered the most terrifying truth. He was already part of the collection. Memories that weren't his own had been slowly integrating into his consciousness. The line between hunter and hunted had completely dissolved. No legal system could prosecute what the Weiss family did. Their work existed in a liminal space between murder and anthropological research, between horror and preservation. They were archivists of human experience, collectors of living memories. Evidence suggested the Weiss family was part of a larger, global network of similar practitioners. Similar ritualistic skinnings had been reported across different continents, each with subtle variations, but the same core methodology of memory preservation. The Weiss family represented an unexpected path of human evolution, a biological technology that could transfer and preserve human experiences with unprecedented accuracy. They were living proof that human identity was far more fluid than previously understood. Survivors of partial transformations began to form support networks, sharing experiences of living with borrowed memories. Some viewed their condition as a curse, others as an extraordinary gift that allowed them to understand human experience at a deeper level. Abraham Weiss's true motivation became clear. He was not a murderer, but an archivist of human suffering and triumph. Each skin was a library, each transformation a way of ensuring that no human story was ever truly forgotten. Modern memory preservation technologies began to mirror the Weiss family's ancient craft. Digital archiving, genetic memory mapping, and neurological research all seemed to be catching up to what they had been doing for centuries. The investigation transformed into a profound philosophical inquiry about the nature of identity, memory, and human experience. How much of ourselves is truly our own? How easily can personal experiences be transferred or stolen? In the end, Kane understood that he was now part of the collection. His identity had become a complex tapestry of borrowed experiences, a living testament to the Weiss family's extraordinary ability to preserve human stories. The collection continued. New skins would be added, new stories preserved. The Weiss family's work was far from over. It was an eternal mission to document the complexity of human experience, one skin at a time. How much of your identity is truly your own, and how much is shaped by the experiences of others? If you could preserve your entire life's experiences for future generations, would you? At what cost? Is there a fundamental difference between digital memory preservation and the supernatural method in the story?